things like the SBA program, and the SBA is just one entity that does this, offering financial incentives to encourage new ideas, because like I said, if we're talking about job growth, 7 out of every 10 new jobs come from small businesses. So that's an important area for job growth, and getting the tax piece right, the regulatory piece right, the workforce training piece right, and the incubator and accelerator piece right. Those are really the ingredients, coupled with the mentorship program.
With regards to the federal government, what do you think is holding entrepreneurs and startup businesses back the most?
Tell them how that you were in the Lead and Succeed.
No, I was also in one of the Lead and Succeed entrepreneurship programs.
What's your name?
This is
What's your name?
my name? Gianni Quattrochi.
Thank you, Jeff.
Quattrochi, you're Irish, huh? I'm sorry, it was,
What do you think is holding entrepreneurs
what's holding them back?
back the most?
There's a lot,
Yeah.
historically, that's held them back. Think if you had an idea and you want to start a business. First thing is, where does the initial funding come from, right? Ideas are important in the seed, but you need to start the business. You need to rent a property or buy a property. You need to purchase property, plant, and equipment. You need to deal with the bookkeeping piece of it. You need to deal with the marketing piece of it. There's a whole host of pieces that go into translating an idea into a business that's ultimately going to earn you money. And finding that funding, so first of all, having a venue, identifying who you're trying to serve, having a really good idea, having the venue and the financing to back it up, and ultimately then where the legislative piece comes in is, what is the legislative landscape you're operating in? Are you operating in an environment that is crushing you when it comes to taxes, crushing you when it comes to regulations? Is there not a skilled workforce out there that allows you to hire people? That's a big challenge right now. One of the challenges that comes with economic growth is we have a situation now where there's 6.5 million unfilled jobs in this country because there's the jobs, but there's not the skilled labor to fill it. So these are all different pieces to the puzzle. But all the obstacles to entry, and that's really what we need to do, because we don't want an environment where it's only the massive players in certain industries that are doing well. We want to provide an environment for small businesses, people with brand new ideas, because that's really what's going to help us innovate.
Anyone else? No one? Nope. I'll come back to you.
Thank you. Congressman, in watching the growth of small businesses in Bristol Borough, one of the things we encounter is a kind of sticker shock that they undergo for things like technology infrastructure, whether it's Verizon, Comcast, Pico, whatever, running their wiring, getting themselves up and running in terms of the internet and the systems they need is very expensive, and the margins are so narrow. And I wonder if it would make good sense to have a tax incentive program where those companies give free service for startups for a year or 2 years as they're getting on their feet. It would stimulate more technology growth, and I don't know what kind of leverage you would have, but it's a thought that I've had for a while that I know that, and of course we could ask those corporations to do it voluntarily. It would be a nice gesture, but I think it's something that would help somewhat.
I think it's a great idea. I think we're going to call it the Lopez Act. That's a great idea. And one of the benefits, so when we do a lot of small business tours, I do 100 a year. And that's the purpose of it is to learn. And when I went to Stacks & Company last week, I mean, you want to talk about an inspiring place. Young kids who, quite frankly, had courage that I never had, that are stepping out there and taking an idea at a young age and being able to step out and not necessarily going the safe path, not necessarily going the path where the safest job is going to be on the outside, but taking their passion, what they really believe in, where they want to advance and make a difference in their country, and they're willing to take a risk. And I think we need to be there for those people that are willing to take that risk. I think that's one great example. I think the most important piece from the legislative standpoint is that small business startups, as they're going through that process, share their stories with lawmakers, share them with city council members, with state legislators, with members of Congress, because that's what should be translating in the law. Because it's everybody's interest to make sure that the small business startups, the entrepreneurs, have the ability to grow. We don't want to be in an environment where you have barriers to entry left and right for the very entities that employ 7 out of every 10 new employees and that are really the engine of the economy. I think that's a great idea. I know in some ways they do voluntary service. I know Verizon just did an entire lab at FDR Middle School in Bristol Borough, which we visited, which was phenomenal. But I think the volunteerism piece of it is good, but I think a lot of it ought to be required if we determine that it's going to benefit small businesses in the economy. I think it's a great idea. And it'll help Bristol Borough, I guess, right? Yeah. What is the cost, by the way, Bill? When you say small margins, you're saying small margins for the startups. So what would it cost to get So it's not necessarily the installation, you're saying it's the ongoing monthly. Got it, okay. Yeah. And what's comprising of that $2,000? Is it utilities as well? Okay. Right. Sure. So it's beyond telecom, you're saying it's also getting utilities and electric and things like that, okay? Sure.
I know that some utility companies will also require maybe a letter of credit or something like that if you're setting up a large, an operation that sucks a lot of power out of the grid or something like that. That could be an impediment also. The deposit. So maybe if there was a program that helped to offset that, either that deposit requirement or the letter of credit requirement, which would also help, to your point, to get people set up. But my question is, whether it's for the Congressman or Dean Timby or just generally, what are we doing to help the entrepreneurs with global opportunities? Perhaps to sell a product overseas or a piece of software overseas or something like that. What are our globalization programs?
Do you want me to say something about that? Okay. Well, as a college, we have started to expand our reach overseas and also bring students here to get their education. The VITA program, I think, is going to be really important in globalization because we have students in there that English isn't their first language. They're coming here, learning how to start a business, and then they can obviously take some of that back to their home countries if they return there or share it with people who are still there. You know, the virtual space obviously allows for a lot of expansion in that area as well. So we have 3 different classes that are online for entrepreneurship. Our intro class, our marketing class, and our financials class, so that people can take them from all over the world.
Yeah, and I will say, encouraging that melting pot as far as the entrepreneurship pool. And what you see some of them do, they start off locally when you're talking about entrepreneurship, but so many of them are having businesses that are web-based and they're doing global business instantly. And that's another important piece of the mentorship program, because you can imagine if you're a young person who's got the courage to take that idea, their passion, and move forward with it, there's a lot of perilous pitfalls that they can encounter, not only dealing with, I mean, it's hard enough dealing with the domestic landscape, let alone the international landscape and things like that. That's where that mentorship program comes in really, really huge. And when me and Lisa Rochester toured this facility in Philadelphia, we saw it in action. We saw people that had gone through, maybe they were 2-3 years in, and they were able to share the valuable lessons learned. I always joke that being the youngest of 8 kids, the benefit is I got to learn from all my older siblings' mistakes. This is really that in the entrepreneurship world. They're dealing with people that have made the mistakes, have learned from them, and trying to get these younger kids not to fall into the same traps. But when it comes to the international piece, it gets really tricky, particularly for businesses that are web-based, that are instantly from day one doing businesses globally. And having knowledge of the tax system, the tariff system, the regulatory systems in those countries, what can and cannot comply with domestic law. If they're selling a product, that may be okay in one place but not another under certain standards. Not from the entrepreneurship piece, it's more the Small Business Administration. Commerce Department typically deals with larger entities.
I just want to interject too that the SBA has export assistance.
The SBA has export assistance, which is probably what you're referring to. Bassett Ice Cream, that's been around in Philadelphia since, got export assistance from the SBA. So there are those resources that you mentioned, and they export to China now. Who would have thought that that small ice cream company in Philadelphia? So there's a resource. My class might want to leave because they're done at 10:40. So I'll excuse them. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks, Vanessa. I think it's really, oh, no problem.
That was a lot of interested students. Anybody?
One question that has come up among both business owners and people like us at NEDA with students is the issue of transportation. Often here in Bucks County, there is relatively good transportation in the lower part of the county, but it's very hard for people to move around. And it's hard perhaps for those who are unemployed to get to where their jobs are, or to get to where art classes are, or to upgrade their skills and so on. Is there, well, what can government do, or how can business and education folks work with government to perhaps improve our transportation and make it easier for workers to participate?
Transportation is a huge piece, so I actually didn't even mention that before, but all the pieces to filling unfilled jobs, there are a lot of people. So one of the things we're seeing in the small business arena, we're seeing a lot in the VOTEC fields, is job vacancies, inability to fill those vacancies led, the number one reason, unfortunately, is the inability to pass a drug test, which feeds into much of the opioid epidemic. Second is the skills gap, not having a skilled workforce to match the skills of a lot of the VOTEC jobs. The third piece is actually transportation. There are people that can pass a drug test, do have the skills, but can't get to the job that they want to get to, and that's a big problem. It is. And that's where you get into transportation, innovation, transportation development. It's obviously more of a challenge in some of the rural areas in the country, suburban areas in the country as well. That is definitely a problem here. And it kind of begs the question, how to sort of modernize that. Obviously, spatial concerns limit where you can and cannot put railways. Obviously, rail is an important means of transportation. But I think a lot of this should fall on the companies as well to offer financial incentives, if not cover that for employees. Because if these organizations are as desperate to fill these jobs as they are, I think that ought to be an added benefit. It's taken care of in a lot of organizations. It's taken care of to a large extent in the federal government. People that work for certain federal agencies in DC, their Metro Pass is covered, not 100%, but it's heavily subsidized. I think that's a piece of the puzzle as well.
So that problem sounds like an opportunity, and we do have classes that focus on a consulting model where we ask local businesses, organizations, what are their main challenges, what are their problems, and then the students turn them into opportunities and give them suggestions. The Lead and Succeed program this summer incorporated that as well, and we had a really nice note that came back from one of the business owners and said they took the high school students' 3 suggestions and implemented them right away. So I think that's, in terms of having that entrepreneurial mindset, even in Congress, dare I say, looking at problems as opportunities and, you know, where can you find those resources that might not be within your own, maybe, you know, situation.
I would say, I should have mentioned this for the kids while they were here, but that is really important. And the suggestion that Bill made, I gotta tell you, the way I think this whole thing is supposed to work is ideas that are generated on the ground from people that eat, sleep, and breathe these things every single day of the week, translating that, identifying what the legislative gap is, shortfall, obstacle, whatever, and making that fix. And that's, I will tell you, one of the most gratifying things about what I do is taking issues like people with ALS that are struggling and translating into law, people that are being cyberstalked, translating into law, children of fallen heroes who can't afford college, translating that into law, taking business ideas that are obstacles to growth and actually factoring that into legislation. And I will tell you, Bill, as soon as I leave here, I'm gonna call my legislative director, I'm gonna have him get on this right away and introduce it into in the Small Business Committee, which I sit, have a hearing. We can bring Bristol business owners down, people from Bucks County to testify, and convince other committee members to get a bill on the floor of the House and hopefully get it signed into law, which will ultimately benefit. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's the way it should work with transportation as well. Taking the ideas and manifesting that ultimately into a solution.
I've got the congressman's microphone, but I don't speak for the congressman. I just wanted to add on the transportation question that in Bucks County, there is the Transportation Management Association, which helps to create linkages between public transit and employers. So I would encourage you to go to that organization's website and learn about its TMA Bucks, and they can assist you with any of those kinds of questions that you have also.
Hi, I'm Liz Siggety. I'm chair of the Emerging Companies and Venture Capital Practice at Fox Rothschild, but maybe more pertinent to this group is I'm managing director and founder of Delaware Crossing Investor Group, which is an angel investment network in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And we've invested in a lot of startups. And one of the issues that I'm seeing recently, the landscape has changed since we started 14 years ago, is the wonderful development of incubators and accelerators. There are many of them and they're really, really helpful to starting up businesses, but there's a lot graduating from them that then can't find financing. And the best businesses do, but there's still a lot of really good businesses that are left out, that there's not enough follow-on money. Now I know the federal government has the small business tax credit, where capital gains over a period of time are exempt. And that angels really do like that and really do pay attention. I don't know if there's anything else going on sort of for the next step for these emerging businesses.
Yeah, so the tax credits are one. The second piece is programs like the SBA has for accelerator companies, which is a competition. Ultimately, the goal is, and all these investors, as you can imagine, make their decision based on the promise that they see in a product and an idea and a service that they think is a wise investment that's ultimately going to earn them money. So the key is connecting the startups with the investors, and that's part of what the accelerator program is all about. The mentorship program, helping them avoid those pitfalls along the way, and then ultimately, it's going to be on the entrepreneur to sell that product, service, or whatever it is that they're generating to those investors. And I think the role that the government plays is offering them the financial incentives early on and get them up and running, and then connecting or offering the pathway to connect to financiers and investors through the mentorship program. And then just basically give that small startup the ability to then move forward on that.
Anybody else? Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you, Congressman Fitzpatrick, President Chambliss, trustees. And feel free, there's coffee and a few breakfast treats over there for you to help yourself. And we'll see you at our next event. Thank you.